Guys of Reddit who have rejected someone. What's the worst way someone has taken it? Story 1 was in New York during Fleet Week, in my dress whites with my group, waiting to cross the street. Drunk girl comes up to me, grabs me and says she's always wanted to be with a sailor. I gently stiff arm and let her know I'm happily married, but point out my young single shipmate in the group. But I want you. Her friends have arrived by this point. She told them I was being mean because I said no, and started crying. The friends confronted me. It's her birthday though. Your wife isn't even here, just be nice. Story 2 I came home from work to find her naked on my bed about a week after we broke up. She went into complete denial about the breakup, and for months after would tell people we were still dating show up at my house. Story 3 dated a girl from work. After a few dates I didn't see it going much further. Ended it. Girl pretty much spread around we fucked at work. We didn't. That single-handedly cost me any kind of promotion or horizontal move off what I was doing, so I ended up changing jobs about 12 months later after every application for promotion was given to someone else despite myself having a lot more experience know-how with what we did. Prior to that I was being moved around from project to project. After, I just went back to permanent nights. Said girl went on to get pregnant about 6 months later by someone else from work. Lesson: don't dip your wick in company ink. Story 4 a girl at work started playing some aggressive footsie at work. When I pushed her foot away and gave her a look, she went on to tell me I'm not as attractive as I think I am and that I should start dating girls in my own league. Story 5 lying to me that she had become pregnant and intended to keep the kid. We had always practiced safe, but condoms have a non-zero failure rate, and there's no good way to tell someone who says they're pregnant that they're wrong, so I took her at her word. After 3 weeks of her stalling on showing me any kind of proof beyond her word, she told me it wasn't going to be a problem, but I was beside myself with stress until then. Meanwhile, in figuring out if I need to lawyer up, I take responsibility for myself, so being a deadbeat wasn't an option. But child support was going to throw a huge wrench into my financial plans. I was in the middle of moving to a new city as well. All in all, it sucked. Near as I can tell, her goal was to inflict stress and pain. She succeeded. Story 6 a dude asked me over to his house to study. He put on some and asked me off. I said no, and then he figured he'd ask if he could. I rejected him and told my mom to come get me. He persisted the whole time. Then at school every time he saw me he very loudly called me gay to everyone around him. I am not into dudes and he was in the closet. Honestly, I just smiled and kept moving every time and he eventually gave up. I think he came out 2 years later and was one of the 4 gay dudes in school in revolving relationships with each other. Told everyone in the office I was gay. I have no problem with gay people, so I played along. Story 7 me and this Irish chick hooked up. We had a few great nights of fucking each other's brains out. Come the following week, we play it off at work like nothing ever happened. About 2 weeks after that, we are fucking and sucking each other silly after work. I realized after a month that our 20-year difference in age is gonna lead us nowhere together. I break this to her, and she walks to the site parking lot and burns my pickup truck to the ground. Like not even the aluminum rim survived this. She was arrested for arson. I laid no charges against her. I got a new truck thanks to insurance. Never around with a redhead. They are psycho. Story 8 rejected 3 different girls in a 2-month span and all 3 what? Are you gay? No, so I'm ugly. I didn't say that. Word for word every incident. One of them was kind of fugly though. Story 9 1 took it gracefully. We're great friends and it has never been mentioned again. 1 took it okay enough. Conversations got colder, but no baggay. 1 couldn't take no for an answer. Every conversation progressed to do you want to, why don't you want to date me? Got old quick. I tried being nice and letting her off easy, but she wouldn't stop. Cut her out of my life. But the last thing she told me was ill wait for you. I'm not even good looking. Story 10 not me, but my best friend in school. She came onto him hard in public. There were about a dozen people around. He was startled and turned her down. She then started screaming, stamping her feet and crying. Then she told all her friends that she would commit suicide. They tried to guilt my friend with that, but he managed to shrug it off. The whole thing blew off in 3 days. High school was weird. Story 11 my ex-wife started acting real shady, sneaking out of the house to make phone calls, hiding incoming calls and not telling who was calling in the middle of date night even though I asked nicely. She was also a mean drunk and had started drinking to excess every night. Then the physical violence started. Throwing at my head, including a large rock, kicking and punching when she got angry. This is where I drew the line. One night she went off the rails again in front of her small children, and I just knew that I could no longer live like that. I had just returned home from a week-long business trip and hadn't unpacked my bags yet. So I grabbed those, took one last look at my nice home and my family and left. As I walked out I knew full well that all of the things I didn't grab were probably gone for good, but I needed to be as well, or I would either end up in jail or dead. She blew my phone up for the next couple of weeks, at least 60 text messages a day on the work cell, all hate-filled and incredibly vile. I tried to call her a couple of times when off of work to talk about how we could best separate our finances and things and try to move on amicably, but she would just scream and accuse me of cheating because that was the only logical reason why I had left. Cheaters all do this BTW. The last time we talked before the divorce she threatened to file a false police report for harming her 4-year-old son. She didn't specify whether the allegation would be physical or sexual in nature. That didn't matter to me, neither happened, and either one would end my career and my freedom. I cut off all contact. I tried to get her served with divorce papers only to learn from the process server she had abandoned the home. I went to survey the damage to find almost all of my clothes had been bleached, along with our new living room set. The new dining room table and chairs had been gouged, weeks' worth of trash and raw food had been left out. The refrigerator had been turned off, leaving hundreds of dollars of food to rot. The whole place smelled like death. She had also taken all of the electronics, probably to hawk, my passport with stamps in it from around the world, and the painting I had inherited from my beloved grandfather who had passed away. She knew this would hurt me the most. All said and done, $7,000 in property damage and another $1,500 in stolen property. I filed a police report for insurance reasons and also for a restraining order, because my ex had obviously gone bats hit and was capable of anything. The police of course didn't give two shits, not surprisingly, because vagina. Story 12. She cried and was wailing it was because she was ugly and it's her weird nose in public. I told her it wasn't and it's me. I used to think I wasn't shallow but her nose was Mount Everest and Uncanny Valley at the same time. She later said I slapped my on her nose to get off. Edit: I did not have sexual relations with that nose. Story 13. A girl in high school out of the blue started describing what our house would be like once we got married and had kids. Told her that I really wasn't interested, and she lost her mind. For like 2 weeks shed wait by the doors after school just to glare at me. Never said anything, just glared. Story 14. She stalked the out of me, stole hair clippings and made a shrine to me, in her closet. She was a real mental case. It's been over a decade but she still seems to find me somehow. Story 15. I once went on an internet double date. My friend had been internet dating this woman for a while, and needed a driver to go meet her for the first time. To help convince me to drive, they arranged for one of her friends to come with. When we got to the meetup spot a few cities over, the friend wasn't there, stuck at work. So I was forced to play third wheel, watching my friend and his girlfriend profess their love and make out. Needless to say, when friend finally showed up, I was overjoyed. She misinterpreted my thank God, someone to talk to reaction for a oh my god, love at first sight reaction. She got way intense way quick, so I eventually let her down as easily as I could. For months afterwards, I'd get multiple emails and phone calls a day, with the craziest example being an email with our names together forever. I love you typed out once for every day since we'd met. She also apparently went to my work once, but luckily I wasn't there at the time. I was on the verge of calling the cops after that stunt. Eventually, my complete lack of responses to her communication, and after blocking several of her email addresses, it tapered off. But I'd still get random phone calls and emails from her, even years after this all happened. Story 16. Pulled a knife on me, like a kitchen knife in the middle of the school. I feared my life. She swung at me a few times and gashed my cheek, then she started slashing at herself before teachers apprehended her. She was screaming all the while as well, and people wonder why I don't like Doki Doki Literature Club. Story 17. Girl asked me to prom, told her I wasn't planning on going because I wasn't interested. Told her I had to work anyway. Asked for a few days to change my work schedule so I could go. I politely declined and she understood. Story 18. TLDR. She got engaged to make me realize that she was my one true love and then threatened to commit suicide if I didn't elope with her. Girl who I saw just as a friend and had never flirted with started dropping really obvious I'm in love with you things in texts. I can't wait to go on a date with you. I can't wait to kiss you, etc. I told her I wasn't interested that way. She kept pushing until I told her I was dating someone I wasn't, and she sent me a really angry text message and disappeared. She started dating someone and got engaged, so thought I was home and free, until she messaged me the night before her wedding. Basically she said she'd just started dating the other guy to make me realize how much I loved her and wanted me to save her from a marriage to this awful man. I told her no. Then she said that she'd just swallowed a bottle of pills and wouldn't go to the hospital unless it was on the way to Vegas to elope. I called a mutual friend and told them what had happened and proceeded to block the crazy girl on everything. Turns out she hadn't actually swallowed a bottle of pills, was just being crazy. Story 19. I dated a girl for a week when I realized she just wasn't my type and I wasn't hers. So I told her we would go our ways. Her way, however, was to stalk me for 3 fucking years because we were meant to be together for life. Highlights were making fake internet accounts of other girls I dated in those 3 years and knowing frightening much about me and these girls while writing me, impersonating them, calling every day. When I changed numbers she called every other person in my life she had the number of, trying to date people I know in my life. Making weird collages of me and her on Facebook, making up fake stories of her and me and many more. Thank God it became less and less after long and exhausting talks I had with her to make her stop on and on again. Didn't hear from her since 2015. Story 20. We'd dated a few times and I decided that, while she was nice, I wasn't interested in pursuing a long-term relationship with her. I thought it would be best to let her know face-to-face rather than over text, so we met up for a drink in the city. I made sure we got a booth for some privacy, and told her that it'd been nice but that I don't think taking things further was going to work. She began to cry uncontrollably and very loudly demanding what she'd done wrong. Even from our booth, people started looking over at us. Maybe it was unfair of me to do it in public, but honestly, we'd only went out for dinner and drinks about 4 times by that stage, so I wasn't expecting her to react so strongly. Story 21. Not rejected, but ended a relationship where she was clearly looking for something more serious than I was. She put on a smile, said she was disappointed and we went our separate ways. I see her a few weeks later in a Starbucks and all breaks loose. starts ripping me apart in line, crying while telling me I'm not a real man. I haven't been back to that Starbucks since. Story 22 met some friends at a bar event. Friends had girl who was beyond shithoused with them. Friends mentioned going back to their place. I decide to buy a burrito and go home. Girl says I should come with. I respectfully decline. She demands I come with. I decline again. Well, at least give me a goodnight kiss if you're not going to come with. I pass because I do not know her, am not remotely into her, and do not want to know her. This girl goes batshit. She's shrieking obscenities at me, trying to slap me from the railing she's against. Just losing her mind. My friends are trying to calm her down, and I just pieced out through the kitchen of the place because I work there. Story 23 had a chic smell me all over WDF. I know me, tried to dirty dance with me many times after I declined several times. Tell me what she was. And finally, after cupping my say stop being a because I wouldn't her, weirdest fucking person I've ever met. She later broke some in the women's restroom and walked home several miles, alone, on foot at 4 a.m. without telling her friends. Story 24. This was a bit of a double-edged sword, but 2 girls in college, different times. The first one had a crush on me and her ex, and I helped her through everything, was not opposed to but never pushed for it. She made it her goal to make me feel as jealous as possible around other guys. Maybe a year later she finally asks me over to spend the night with her. I was a little baked, and after the weird, she passed out and started snoring. I felt weird as lying in bed stoned and awake, so I decided to leave. The next day she texts me super angrily as expected and ignores me for a few weeks. Maybe a month later, she posts a picture of an ultrasound and tags me in it, messaged me back a few hours later saying it was a joke, and her mom called her crying. That's why she told me. Second girl had BPD but was calm and interesting enough to pursue. She asked me to go to clubs and bars with her, and then made out with other guys while there, even though she said we were kind of dating. Whenever she wanted away from a particular guy she would come find me and start making out with me. I still gave her the benefit of the doubt for 2 months, until she straight up made me catch her with her ex. These are 2 girls who both wanted to date me and made elaborate schemes to exact some sort of revenge on me. I've stayed away from those types for years now. Story 25. I broke up with this girl and she didn't want to. She tried to talk me out of it and then tried to rape me by pinning my hands with her knees and trying to take my pants off. Being bigger and stronger, I just stood up and dumped her in the floor. I never thought about rape same again after that. One time later, her other ex, my best friend, was visiting and she came over. Things seemed to be going okay when all of a sudden she leapt up in the air and tried to come down on my chest with her knees like some kind of wrestling move. I was so mad, I literally threw her out my front door and told her to get the out of my life. Turns out she was jealous of our friendship. I don't think I ever saw her again. And for the record, that was good, you know what they say. Story 26. I've got one in middle and elementary school. This weird girl took a liking to me, followed me around at recess, and wanted me to marry her when I grew up. If I wanted a recess to myself, I'd have to outrun her and lose her. Kept me in good shape. Fast forward to high school, I landed in the same film arts class as her. I'd often be out filming interviews and short films around the school, but when I was in the editing room, there she'd be, ogling me from across the room, inching her chair closer and closer, and complimenting me on virtually everything: my hair, clothes, jewelry, etc. I was a socially awkward teenager, and I didn't explicitly tell her no as soon as I should have. She reached out to me on Facebook a few times asking if I'd consider dating her, and that's when I said I have no doubt you'll find the one, but it is not me. I'm pretty sure she started stalking me after that. It all started when I was biking to school one day and saw her leaning up against a telephone pole at the end of my street, staring at me as if she was expecting me. She lives quite far away from me. I used to live on her street in elementary school, so she must followed me home, then gotten up at the crack of dawn, and figured out when I'd be leaving for school. This happened a few times. Fast forward to present day, she seems to have figured out what routes I take home from work. Sometimes I'll be biking to work or home from work, and she'll be standing at an intersection again, staring at me as if she's expecting I'm going to come this way. She messaged me again a few weeks ago asking if I'd date her, and I gave her a very clear rejection. Hopefully this time it sticks. I'm just really glad she doesn't know where I live. Story 27. My ex-GF broke up with me. Fine. 1 month later I asked us to go back together and she refused. 3 months later I found a new girlfriend. Everything is fine. Few months later my ex goes inside my college and asks me to go back. I refused. She threw a tantrum in the middle of the Sutens. Everyone looked at me. She basically said that I'm a son of a for not wanting her back. Never saw her again. Story 28. Not me but my best friend. He broke up with his psychotic GF, so I went over to be supportive and I end up calling a female friend over that I know likes him and I leave. Around 3 a.m. he calls me to tell me his ex tried crawling through the dog door to get into his house. Somehow she manipulated him into getting back with her and she's still that psychotic. Story 29. Not sure if this counts as me rejecting her, but we were 16 and in freshman year in college. We'd actually been good friends up to this point. One day I decide to confide in her that I had a crush on one of her friends from an org. She went mental. No fair, I got to you first. She then transferred to all my classes and told everyone I was stalking her. All my friends and hers didn't believe, fortunately. Except for that one girl I had a crush on. See, screw you, Debbie. Story 30. Rejected a girl I barely knew who then started screaming she was going to kill herself if we weren't together. I felt bad for her, but pro tip for you ladies that think this is a winning strategy, it kinda makes people wanna date you less. She proceeds to get on the ground and writhe around saying she's having a panic attack and she could die from it. I almost laugh at how fake it all is. I mean, she gently sits down during her fall and then positions herself carefully and then stops moving, but a group of people come by and rescue her. We were outside a campus. She goes to hospital and obviously the doctors find there's nothing wrong with her, but she claims they just couldn't spot it. Start spreading the word on how she nearly died from the cruel abuse I threw at her, and how when she was dying in the streets from a severe panic attack, I just cruelly laughed and walked away. Don't think a lot of people bought her story, but I never really saw her again, so it just kinda disappeared on its own. Story 31. Standard stuff. Spread rumors that I'm gay, spread rumors that I have a tiny penis, spread rumors that I have erectile dysfunction, all the same woman, still hates me over a decade later. Story 32. She stalked me for 19 months, tried to hit me with a car, tried to shoot me, tried to stab me, wrote my mom a letter and signed it in her blood, wrote me a letter and did the same thing, and told all my friends I raped her. A few of them actually believed her, which just mystified me. On the positive side, I learned how to get a restraining order, gun permit, and concealed carry permit. I even learned you can get them at the same office from people who work at desks right next to each other. Pro tip: when they ask you why you need a restraining order and a gun permit, don't say because if one doesn't work, the other will. They have no sense of humor in that office. Story 33. When I was in high school, a girl I had started hanging out with was texting and asked me out over text. I was trying to think of the best way to let her down and she was getting impatient, so I basically told her that I liked being friends and I don't want to be anything more than that, and that I don't want to date while I'm in high school because between school, work, and my MMA classes I didn't have a lot of time for dating, plus I lived out of town and didn't have a car. She sent me a text that just said no and wouldn't respond. After that she stalked me for a while and tried to make me jealous, even going as far as getting herself pregnant. Another girl I had turned down didn't react quite as badly. I was doing headshots for her in our school's photography studio to add to her modeling portfolio, and sometimes during photo shoots things can become a little intimate when you have to physically pose them, essentially move them like a mannequin to get the exact pose you want, and after a month of us talking and doing photo shoots she asked me out, but I declined and she just walked away out of the studio not saying anything. Started dating a guy immediately after that and asked how it made me feel, but when I said I was happy for her she flipped out and after that would purposefully get super flirty with me anytime she saw me talking to a girl, trying to ruin any potential romance and getting really aggressive with any girl she thought I had a thing with. There have been a few since, but the stories aren't interesting enough to justify adding to a long post, but basically one tried telling people I raped her, another became a cam girl and has finally stopped cyberstalking me after 4 years, and the last one came after me with a knife. Story 34. I got a message off a woman on a dating site asking me out. I took a look at her profile and she says she doesn't want kids, which is something I want. I sent her a quick thanks but no thanks and explained why, and got the response of him not asking you to fucking marry me. Story 35. They broke down in tears. And for the next 3 years I was bullied by those 2 years older than me in high school. I was shy and didn't know how to handle an attractive 15-year-old. I was 13 at the time, coming up to me and giggling with her friend. I thought I was being made fun of again. Story 36. There was a married woman who I met when I was 14 and she was 19. When I was 16 she decided that she loved me and I was 16, so naturally I loved her back. When I was 18 it started getting weird because it felt like she mentally tortured me. I was like a boy toy to her and she was the first woman Eve been with. She was hot as, but that was her only good quality. She would try to make me jealous by being all over her husband and would go weeks without saying anything to me. The guilt I have is toward that man who tried to be my mentor because he is a good man. I tried breaking it off with her but she didn't like that, so I was happy when she broke it off. I think she just needed to feel in power. Now I'm 25 and have a beautiful wife who is awesome and loves me for who I am, and we try to help each other grow through encouragement. Reflecting on it, I'm glad it happened because it helps me to fully appreciate my wife for who she is, knowing that she wants the best for me. Sorry if this isn't well written, which is probably why I'm a mechanic. Story 37. I've posted this before, but figure this is a good one for people here. So originally my ex-GF broke up with me. She was 25 at the time. I said okay cool, you'll move out at the end of finals. About 2 weeks, she left for a few days to hang out with friends. I decided to move all my stuff out while she was gone except some clothes, my bed and laptop. She comes back, notices everything of mine is gone and starts flipping out, causing a moving out. Thought she wanted me out. She probably wanted me to beg to stay together. She kicks the trash can, screams a bit, cries, starts pouting and stomping around the room, then lays on the floor pounding her hands and feet into the ground like a child. It's exactly how it sounds. I of course start laughing because I don't know WTF is going on and this is ridiculous. I finally had to step in when she started trying to stab her leg with pencils. Eventually I find a place and move out. She would call me and talk a bit, then start yelling or getting upset. I would warn her that if she can't talk like an adult I will hang up on her. She hated that. Of course she didn't stop, so click. She calls back and ID answer like nothing happened and she start yelling don't hang up on me. Then I hung up on her again. This would go on for a bit before I got bored and stopped answering. Eventually this happened again where she would call and I would end up hanging up on her. She called again and told me she was coming over. Now I never told her where my new place was, but she knew the general area. I quickly park my car in the garage and go back to playing video games. She calls me and tells me she's outside and I should come out. Luckily she was down the road at some other house. I tell her she's crazy and needs to seek professional help. So what does she do, you ask? She decides to push her car horn for a good 15 minutes at 10 p.m. in a residential neighborhood, all the while telling me in a frustrated childlike voice that I need to come outside. Of course I'm not going to do that and tell her to go home. At some point she realizes this is going nowhere, goes home, then calls me and tells me she just took a ton of pills and to come over or she'll die. I tell her I'm going to call the cops, and realizing that she would lose her job, works with kids, agrees to puking the pills out. To see a grown adult literally throw a temper tantrum with flailing limbs was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Story 38. Girl I knew in high school named Rachel was 100 into me. I was 0 into her. We were completely different people. She was uber religious. I hated religion. I loved video games. She hated them. I loved metal music. She hated it. But my luck be damned, she was hard into me. One time, a group of us were at another girl's house who was friends with Rachel. Truth or Dare came up and I was pulled into it against my will, but whatever, I picked Truth. Asked if there was a girl there I liked. I did, but not Rachel. Next time I took a Dare, was dared to make out with Rachel by my buddy who knew I was not into her at all. Great, she gets really red in the face and excited. We are in the friend's basement and the bathroom was upstairs. I tell Rachel to wait in the back room as I had to go to the bathroom quick. Made up some about brushing my teeth real quick or some. I straight up left. My dad's house was like 4 blocks away. I just started walking there. Got to my dad's house and just hung out for the evening and went home after he fed me dinner. Apparently, Rachel had a massive breakdown that night. Uber depression, crying fits, screaming at her parents, and to top the night off, she tried killing herself by slitting her wrists, saying it was all my fault, if I had just loved her like she loved me. Saying I lead her on, even though I hardly ever talked to her, it was all my friend Steven who would say like Matt keeps talking about you and the like. Thankfully she was a grade lower than me so I never ran into her at school and I kinda stopped hanging out with that group of friends. Story 39. We had only dated for 3 months and I decided to break it off because she was really suffocating me and trying to control every aspect of my life, including that we should just go down to the courthouse and get married. Yikes. When I broke it off, all was quiet for a few hours, and I was like I guess it wasn't so bad after all, but I was wrong. So wrong she proceeded in an hour to send about 150 texts. She said she was going to bring it. I blocked the number, but then got text app texts, was able to block that too, then the Facebook barrage. Hundreds of angry, threatening messages regarding me, my apartment and cat, insisting I was breaking her going into the relationship. I told her it takes me a while to really connect with people, and even so, most people aren't head over heels after 3 months. She was going to kill herself and it was my fault, called her bluff. She got really mad then, I blocked her. She tried adding all my family members and friends on Facebook. People started contacting me if I was okay because she was posting threats on FB. She said she would reveal my secrets, but like, she only knew some could be considered embarrassing things about me that honestly anyone who knows me already knows. Had to barricade my door that night, change the locks the next day, and tell my work she was coming onto the campus. I like to stream drawing sometimes and she found my live stream profile and spammed the chat with messages about killing herself and how I ruined her life. But the glory of being a moderator for my own stream, I could boot her. She emailed me like a year later expecting sympathy because her kid had enough of her too. I still have a hard time getting myself to date again. Story 40. Classmate. She didn't ask me out, but she dropped hints as subtle as getting hit in the face with a brick. I let her down saying I didn't want to date a classmate. She then let out a fake laugh and started telling the entire class how I was obsessed with her and wouldn't stop asking her out, willing to take it to the dean of students, trying to make me look like the archetypal answer to the other thread. Story 41. When I was 16 I slept with a 15-year-old girl who was a friend of a friend. The next day she was pestering me to meet her again and I wasn't up for it. So she texts me saying if you don't meet me tonight I'll tell the pigs you raped me. I didn't text back or see her again. Kept the messages just in case though. Story 42. What's wild is that in this thread, most top answers are that the girl lied or turned out to be a cheater. In the girl version of this thread, the stories end in violence, stalking, and attempted rape murder. When I try to tell guy friends the difference between walking around as a cis woman versus a cis man, they don't get it. Not that violence doesn't happen to guys, it does. But there's a difference in worldview. Fear until that violence happens to a man seems to be best summed up by Gavin de Becker. At core, men are afraid women will laugh at them, while at core, women are afraid men will kill them. Story 43. She blew my phone up and cursed me out. Her friend called and asked me if I was really going to turn down free, which wasn't free because I had to drive to pick her up. She told me to burn in and threatened to pull up to my house and make a scene. We hooked up once before. My friend later told me she had been accusing guys of rape and getting them jail time. I live in the South and I was not going to end up like Emmett Till either. I ghosted ASAP. Story 44. One spread rumors at my work that I was gay because I wouldn't sleep with her back when I was still married. Another found my mother online and left her a colorful message on her Facebook page saying what a piece of she was for raising such a piece of like me. The latest one spent every conversation we had trying to convince me that it wouldn't work. When I finally agreed with her, she told me that I'm not trying hard enough and I'm just throwing her away. Story 45. Broke up with my ex-GF because she cheated on me. She then told everyone in my class how I beat her. I would never hurt a woman. She begged for me back and said she changed but was still dating multiple 20-year-olds. She was 15, after her 5th boyfriend in 2 months and a trip to rehab later. people realized she was full of. I was all for her turning her life around until I saw how many people's lives she ruined by her own narcissism.